Imagine a 1v1 constructed format defined by high-power gameplay and featuring some of Magic the Gathering's strongest and most iconic archetypes: Affinity, Burn, Dredge, Cloudpost, Initiative, and even Merfolk? A format where you can play with Swords to Plowshares and Counterspell, Luris and Mishra's Bauble, Dark Depths and Thespian's Stage, and even literal, actual Sol Ring. Now, what if I told you that not only does this format exist, but that you can play it for just $30? Seriously, all you'll ever need to spend is $30. It's even in the name. $30 value vintage is one of the best formats that you've probably never even heard of, but you should check it out because it could not be more accessible, as every single deck in the metagame costs, you guessed it, $30. That's the defining characteristic. Every deck is only $30. The gameplay is powerful, exciting, and swingy, as all high-power formats should be. Despite the strict budget, the best value vintage decks have a power level somewhere between that of Modern and Legacy. In Value Vintage, you can cast a turn 1 Minsk and Boo that then dies to your opponent's Lightning Bolt with your ETB trigger on the stack. You can drop an Up the Beanstalk on turn 2 that then turns your Thought Casts into literal Ancestral Recall. You can lock people out of ever dealing you combat damage with the tandem of Energy Field and Rest in Peace. Or you can play a Goblin Guide into Eidolon of the Great Revel, into Sulfuric Vortex, and then Chain Lightning and Fire Blast your opponent to death. This is a community-created format, just as Commander once was. It was first conceived 10 years ago at a card shop in Cincinnati, but it's been picking up a lot more steam in just the last couple of years. Though largely a casual format, Value Vintage has made its way onto the radar of tournament organizers like Star City Games, Nerd Rage Gaming, Apex Games, and even CubeCon. Star City Games has even started running Value Vintage side events at their conventions, including tournaments with a $1,000 prize pool. The format is a brewer's paradise. Its cost-accessible nature, its community-run atmosphere, and its fun and splashy gameplay all combine to make Value Vintage exactly the type of thing that I love about Magic the Gathering. This video is meant to serve as a primer to $30 Value Vintage. I'll explain not only what the format is and how it works, but I also want to highlight a few of my personal favorite decks that have been defining the metagame. I'll also provide some tips for deck building within the budget and point you towards all the places you need to go to play this great format. And so, without further ado, let's begin with who is doing that noise? Yeah. Oh, hiya, it's me, Zelda, star of your favorite video game series, The Legend of Zelda, and I was just here smashing an elderly woman's pots to look for money. Yeah. Why are you smashing pots for money? 'Cause it's my job, bruh. I make 1 to 5 rupees per pot. Sucks, bruh. Have you considered getting a valuable job skill like learning how to code? Yeah, but I can't learn programming. You can. Thanks to Boot.dev, learning to code is as easy and fun as playing a video game, and you literally are living in a video game. Boot.dev, isn't that the immersive platform used to teach programming in the Python, SQL, and Go languages? That's right, Zelda. Boot.dev does all that and more. With Boot.dev, you'll level up, quest, and unlock rewards while simultaneously training for a career in programming. What about my fairy companion? Does she have to come too? Shut up! With Boot.dev, you'll get another companion, Boots. Boots nudges you in the right direction without outright solving the problem for you, and never pesters you and annoys you about missing something. Wow, that does seem better. Want to know the best part, Zelda? The median salary for back-end developers in the United States in 2024 was over $100,000. How much is that in rupees? Sweet mother of Hylia! Boot.dev is available to view for free. You can read and watch all the content you want. It's the hands-on programming, progress tracking, and game mechanics that are unlocked if you decide to purchase Premium. And if you do decide to grab it, use my code Tolarian to get 25% off your entire first year on the annual plan. That's right, 25% off. Thank you, Boot.dev, for helping me grow up from a little elfin boy into a real elfin man with a job skill. The format. $30 Value Vintage is a community-created and regulated 1v1 constructed format. Card legality is simple, as the format uses the official Vintage banned and restricted list. In other words, if a card is restricted in Vintage, it's restricted in Value Vintage too. Brainstorm, Balance, Golgari Grave Troll, and yes, even Soul Ring. These cards are all legal in Value Vintage, but you're only allowed to play a single copy between your deck and sideboard. On the flip side, any card not restricted in Vintage is fair game to play up to 4 copies of. Oko, White Plume Adventurer, Grief and Fury, Arkham's Astrolabe, Skullclamp, the list goes on and on. The only catch is what's described in the name. The total combined cost of your deck and sideboard must be less than $30. Value Vintage uses TCG Player's market price for the cheapest printing of each card, and for this video, we will do the same. In other words, Black Lotus would be legal to play a single copy of in your Value Vintage deck, but of course even the cheapest printing of Black Lotus is still thousands of dollars above the total price limit for your deck. Expensive cards therefore become soft banned. You could put an Atraxa Grand Unifier in your deck, for instance, as the cheapest printing of the card as of the time of this video's recording is $10.63. But if you ran a single copy of Atraxa in your Reanimator deck, the other 74 cards you include would need to total no more than $19.37. Is that trade-off worth it? Well, it's up to you, but it seems unlikely. But other than the Vintage B&R list, how you choose to build your deck, or more specifically, how you choose to spend your budget, is entirely your choice. Maybe you want to build a deck around Oko, Thief of Crowns. Well, Oko's cheapest printing is $2.54 right now. Not bad, a single copy still leaves you with $27.46 to work with. But if you wanted to run 4 Okos, well, all of a sudden, you've blown a third of your budget on 4 cards. Oko is one of the best planeswalkers of all time, but is the 3rd and 4th copy of it more impactful than $5 worth of 50-cent cards? As with many things, it depends. I'll get into some specific deck building tactics for maximizing your budget later in the video. For now, suffice it to say that one of the great joys of this format, and one of the things that makes Value Vintage so much fun to think about and to brew for, is the way assembling your deck feels like putting together a puzzle. You start from your base of what you want to do. For instance, I want to build a High Tide deck, and then that determines the core of your deck. If you want to play High Tide in Value Vintage, you'll of course need to start with 4 copies of High Tide, a 67-cent card currently. That's $2.68 of your budget. You'll also need a replacement for Merchant Scroll, a card which, in a format like Pauper, would be a 4 of staple to help you find multiple copies of your High Tides. But in Value Vintage High Tide, not only is Merchant Scroll a $6.11 card, but it's also restricted in Vintage. So you can play 1 Merchant Scroll in your High Tide deck if you want, or you could take that $6.11 and apply it toward 4 copies of Solve the Equation, a $1.68 card. 4 High Tides and 4 Solve the Equation run you a total of $9.40, giving you $20.60 to work with to build the rest of your deck. Fortunately, most of the rest of the staples of this archetype are very cheap. Frantic Search costs 40 cents. Turnabout is 22 cents. Cloud of Fairies is only 17 cents. Your whole mana base consists of basic islands, which cost 8 cents apiece. And yes, the cost of the basics in your deck counts towards your total. Unlike in many other formats where the main consideration is, what is the most powerful combination of cards I can run to maximize my chosen strategy, every single card you consider for your Value Vintage deck requires an explicit cost-benefit analysis. You will be weighing the strength of every single card you consider against that card's price. There's a common saying that limitations breed creativity. This phrase defines value vintage. Yes, there is a very clear restriction as how to build your deck, but within that restriction, there's virtually limitless freedom to play, tune, and explore. No other format in Magic the Gathering combines so many iconic staples of Magic's most powerful formats alongside cards that were barely played during their time in Standard. Supreme Verdict is one of the strongest board wipes ever printed, but it also costs $1.42. So just how much better is it than the 25-cent Depopulate, or the 21-cent Shatter the Sky, or the 12-cent No Witnesses? Is it good enough to justify costing well over 5 times as much as these weaker sweepers? Well, that's for you to decide. So how exactly do you build a value vintage deck? Well, there are a few things to keep in mind when putting together your deck. The first is knowing how to budget. The key to budgeting is having a firm grasp on the various staples available to you. There are a lot of cards that are cheaper versions of more powerful and well-known cards, but that aren't that much worse considering how little they cost. These cards are the key to keeping your deck under budget without sacrificing much power level. Lastly, knowing how to build your mana base is an important skill for deck building in Value Vintage, as well as just about every other format. Let's begin with the most important deck building skill that you'll need for Value Vintage: budgeting. Budgeting is the most important skill to get the hang of while deck building. That $30 budget goes quickly. The average card in your deck can't cost more than 40 cents. So while it may feel easy at the start of a new deck to windmill slam 4 copies of $1 cards into your deck, remember that any playset of a $1 card will take up 13% of your budget all on its own. That certainly doesn't mean you should never run 4 copies of a $1 card, though. It just means that part of the skill and fun of deck building is being very intentional about where you're putting your money. If you're playing white, yeah, you should probably spend 13% of your budget on Swords to Plowshares. A burn deck should certainly spring for 4 copies of Eidolon of the Great Revel, a $1.15 card. A Lurrus deck, on the other hand, might only want 3 copies of Mishra's Bauble, despite its clear synergy with Lurrus. Redundant copies of Bauble are not very useful, so the remaining dollar you would have spent on the 4th Bauble could instead go towards some other card with a higher impact. Staples. The key to staying under budget is knowing about cheaper replacements for well-known but slightly pricier cards. I mentioned earlier in this video the comparison between Supreme Verdict and Depopulate. There are tons of budget replacements for iconic cards in the vintage card pool. So with all that in mind, what are some of the staples of Value Vintage? Lose Focus, for instance, is a powerful counterspell from Modern Horizons 2 that costs just 12 cents. Compare that to Counterspell, which ironically also entered Modern from Modern Horizons 2, which costs $1.23 for its cheapest printing. Playset of Lose Focus will run you 48 cents, which is still less than half the cost of a single counterspell. Should you never run Counterspell in your Value Vintage deck? No, I'm not saying that. It's the best counterspell that's not $1 billion. But if you're struggling due to your budget to fit other cards that you want to run into your blue deck, that $4.92 you spent on a playset of counterspells is one of the first places I'd look for more room. Likewise, Inquisition of Kozilek is the 1-mana discard spell of choice in Value Vintage, as it costs 33 cents, compared to Thoughtseiz's $5.56. Brain Surge is the most powerful card draw you can run up to 4 copies of without breaking the bank, as it's a 32-cent card. Some red players who don't care about instant versus sorcery speed may opt to save 50% of a playset of lightning bolts by swapping them for chain lightnings. Not every card needs a budget version, though. Hymn to Torok is a 33-cent card, and fully unrestricted. Once Upon a Time costs 53 cents. Balance is restricted in Vintage for good reason, but white decks will often run the 1 copy they're allowed to include for the low cost of 75 cents of your budget. There are a lot of great cards that are restricted in Vintage, but are worth running 1 copy of in Value Vintage. Most notable is Sol Ring, a card most decks will want to run 1 copy of even with its $1.19 price tag. Blue decks might want to run one or both of the broken Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time, and any Dredge deck will want to run their allotted one of Golgari Grave Troll, while an Artifact deck might choose to include the one copy of Mystic Forge that they're entitled to. In this video's description, I've linked a list of many of Value Vintage's best cheap staples. These cards are sorted by color and color combinations, and they include dual lands and other useful utility lands. This list is a great reference to come back to whenever you're building a new Value Vintage deck. One of the trickier parts of deck building in Value Vintage is assembling a mana base, but things are easier now than they were even a year ago. There have been a lot of reprints of great dual lands in recent months, and that means a lot of decent untapped dual lands are cheap enough to run in most Value Vintage decks. So what exactly does a mana base look like in the Value Vintage format? Well, it certainly doesn't have fetch lands in it. The check lands, for instance, generally cost between 10 and 25 cents. Many of the fast lands cost less than 30 cents each. Most installments of creature lands, tango lands, and pain lands are cheap enough to easily include in your mana base as well. Not to mention there are weird lands like River of Tears, Secluded Courtyard, and some of the Horizon lands, which are all great pickups for Value Vintage as well. 3-color decks will often run their Tri-Color Evolving Wilds from Modern Horizons 3. 3-color decks that run these lands use them like fetch lands, providing shuffles for things like Brain Surge and Mishra's Bauble. The land cyclers from Lord of the Rings are also very good, especially in tandem with the Tango lands, which have basic land types. The only issue is the best of these cycle lands, Lorien Revealed, is nearly $2. Still, some blue players elect to run a couple copies of Lorien Revealed, deciding the powerful and flexible land cycler is worth the dent to the budget it requires. The metagame. There are so many different things you can do with Value Vintage. From burn decks with playsets of Goblin Guide, Lightning Bolt, and Fire Blast, to control decks with 4 copies of Swords to Plowshares, and good old-fashioned counter spells, to mid-range decks built around broken cards like Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, or Lurrus of the Dream Den. There are combo decks, artifact decks, graveyard decks, big mana decks, you name it. If an archetype exists in Magic, it's an archetype that exists in some form in Value Vintage. Next, I've picked a few of my favorite archetypes in Value Vintage to highlight here. These won't be deck techs, but rather quick deck summaries of their game plan, as well as going over the key cards that are present within each deck. Let's begin with Rhinos. The once dominant modern deck Cascade Rhinos has found new life in Value Vintage. Just like it would have in Modern, your Value Vintage Rhinos deck will run 0 cards with mana value 2 or less, except for the Modern Horizons Suspend card Crashing Footfalls. Cards like Fire and Ice and Incubation Incongruity have a mana value over 3 despite the sides being castable for less than 3 mana, giving you plays in the early game before you hit 3 mana to start cascading. When you're not cascading into Rhinos, the deck also runs powerful standalone threats in Temur colors, such as Undermountain Adventurer, Caves of Chaos Adventurer, and good old Minsk and Boo. Lylea, the Blade Reforged, exploits a rules quirk with Cascade, in that each card you exile as you cascade puts a counter on Lylea, meaning it's possible to surprise your opponent with lethal damage from a mid-combat violent outburst. Full playsets of both Simian and Elvish Spirit Guides speed this deck up considerably, meaning a hand of 2 Spirit Guides, a land, and a Cascade spell can drop a pair of Rhinos literally on turn 1. You could even do it on the draw before your first turn if you have 3 Spirit Guides and a violent outburst in hand. Thopter Sword. Thopter Foundry and Sword of the Meek form a 2-card combo that, if left unchecked for longer than a turn or 2, creates an overwhelming board position. It's also a 2-card combo that costs a total of exactly $2 for a playset of each card. Because the Thopter Sword package is so efficient, it can slot into a number of different strategies. You don't need that many other artifacts to make the combo work, as once it gets going, it fuels itself. You sacrifice the Sword of the Meek to Thopter Foundry to make a 1/1, then the 1/1 entering triggers the sword you just sacrificed, returning it to the battlefield. Many value vintage players opt to include this package in a controlling Lurrus shell, as the full combo meets Lurrus's companion restriction. Oko, Thief of Crowns, is another popular card to pair with the combo, as Oko provides a stream of artifact tokens to feed your Thopter Foundry when you haven't found a Sword of the Meek. Oko also serves as a 1-card backup win condition if your opponent answers the combo. Primal Prayers. In 1997, Wizards of the Coast printed the card Alurin, a powerful enabler for creature combo decks. Unfortunately, Alurin costs $34 for the only printing in Magic from Tempest. Modern Horizon 3's Primal Prayers, on the other hand, is a very similar card to Alurin, and costs just 11 cents a pop. The key combo creature in Alurin decks is Cavern Harpy, and costing only 9 cents each, it's a key combo piece in the Vintage Value Primal Prayers combo deck. With Primal Prayers in play, a single copy each of Cavern Harpy and Rogue Refiner form an infinite, instant speed loop. Pay an energy to cast Rogue Refiner to gain 2 energy and draw a card. Then use 1 of that energy to cast Cavern Harpy and return Rogue Refiner to your hand. Pay 1 life to return the Harpy to your hand, and keep doing this over and over again, netting you 0 energy but drawing your deck. Of course, you need a way to mitigate the life loss, otherwise you can only do this 19 times. Fortunately, the 13-cent card Prosperous Innkeeper is available to not only counteract the life you lose per loop, but to actually turn this loop into infinite life. Oh, and the Friendly Innkeeper also ramps you into Primal Prayers a turn early, thanks to that treasure token. Eventually, you find a Laboratory Maniac to win the game, and as early as turn 3 with the right draw. Hogaak Roots. Modern players from 2019 will have plenty of stories to tell about the marquee card of this next deck, Hogaak, Arisen Necropolis. With this Evil Dead City long banned from Modern, Hogaak costs just 63 cents these days. That makes him a fantastic choice to headline a Golgari deck built around graveyard shenanigans. Many powerful graveyard fillers like Stitcher Supplier and Malevolent Rumble cost less than 50 cents apiece. It's not hard, therefore, to build a powerful and consistent core of both Delve and Convoke fodder, one that's capable of casting Hogaak as early as turn 2. The other namesake card to this deck is Insidious Roots, a powerful engine enchantment from Murders at Karlov Manor that plays very well alongside Hogaak. Cards like Molt Tender and Scavenging Ooze can trigger Roots basically at will, making this graveyard synergy deck one of the format's most potent. 4 copies of Cabal Therapy provide the deck with some potent disruption, while you beat down with your big Necropolis and creature tokens. Frequently asked questions. Next, I'd like to briefly touch on a few questions that many Magic the Gathering players ask when they learn about this format. The first is a question about the budget. Players often worry with budget formats that they'll build a deck only to have a key card from that deck spike in price and make their deck illegal. There are a couple of things to note about this. The first is that this rarely happens these days. With reprints and all, cards are more likely to drop into the format than spike out of the format. Bannings, reprints, and metagame shifts all tend to favor value vintage rather than hurt it. That said, if you do find a specific card in your deck suddenly becomes too expensive to run, there are almost always options to replace them. It is very rare that a price spike makes an entire archetype obsolete. And the good news is, since you've only spent $30 on your deck to begin with, any price spike that invalidates a particular card will be a positive financial outcome for you anyway. In addition to all this, value vintage tournaments have a deck list submission deadline. As long as your deck was legal at the time of that deadline, it won't affect your tournament even if a price spike were to happen overnight. You'll still get to play your deck as submitted, regardless of its total price at the start of round 1. Another question that you might be wondering is, where can I even play value vintage? What's the point of learning a new format if I don't have anyone to play with? Well, I've got good news for you. Value Vintage has a thriving Discord server with hundreds of players all around the United States and even around the world. And that number keeps going up. The Discord server is full of people brewing and discussing the format, looking for pickup games on Magic Online or Cockatrice, and planning local in-person meetups to play in paper in their area. What's more, as I mentioned at the start of this video, Value Vintage is increasingly becoming a supported side event format at SCG cons and other tournament series. This is a trend that's only going to continue. Lastly, because these decks cost only $30, it shouldn't be too hard to convince your friends to give the format a shot. Print out a couple of proxy decks to jam some games, and if you have fun, each player in your playgroup can build a deck for just, say it with me now, $30. You can build a complete Tier 1 Value Vintage deck for less than the price of a booster box, or a bundle, or a Commander Precon, or you get the idea. If you are interested in Value Vintage, if you have questions about Value Vintage, if you want to learn more or begin, check out the Value Vintage Discord server, which I have linked in this video's description. It is an incredibly friendly community in there, and I highly recommend checking it out, even if you're still not sure you're ready to build a deck. You know, it's no secret that I'm a fan of budget formats. I wish every deck in every format could cost just $30. But of all the budget formats that I've encountered in my time playing Magic the Gathering, Value Vintage is one of my new favorites. The metagame is fun, powerful, and extraordinarily diverse. The price point is perfect for maximizing your ability to build creative and interesting decks. If nothing else, I hope you will follow that link in this video's description to check out the Value Vintage Discord server and begin your Value Vintage journey today. And if you're interested in other budget formats for Magic the Gathering, check out the most recent episode of Shuffle Up and Play, where I got to play Pauper with Gavin Verhey, Andrea Mengucci, and Paige of the Pauper format panel. This episode was able to show off over 8 Pauper decks, and so you should check it out to see them in action. And who knows, maybe an upcoming episode of Shuffle Up and Play will feature Value Vintage for you to enjoy.
Next time on Shuffle Up and Play.
What's up? It's Shuffle Up and Play, and today we have balanced our decks against a medium deck.
Mid? Did they call it? I think the kids call it mid.
But okay, off.
Your deck was bonkers, crazy, powerful.
They replaced a couple cards.
And how many was that?
20? 20! I have a really easy turn 1, a Gloom Lake Verge land.
Drop return.
And then I'm going to drop return.
This is what I assume your lives are usually like. As influencers.
You're an influencer!
You're an influencer!
I'm going to tell you this! See, that's what you do!
Death Cap Glade.
Is that a no cap? What's the, it's cap? Yeah, cap. Cap.
I want to attack, but I don't think anybody's naked. You got a 4/4 froggy.
Can't be naked.
What? Is this a common vibe?
Sometimes I say things and I don't know why.